It was lost, then seen, then it was found, and then it was found again. In 1925, the SS Cotopaxi set sail from Charleston, South Carolina, bound for Havana, Cuba. The steamship encountered a massive and fierce storm, and after sending out a cryptic distress call, it disappeared without a trace. Despite intense search efforts, neither the ship nor its crew was ever found, further adding to the mystique of the place where it went down, the Bermuda Triangle. Decades later, in the 1980s, Cuban fishermen reported sightings of what they called a barco fantasma, a ghost ship drifting in and out of the mist. The legend grew until Cuban authorities claimed to have discovered the Cotopaxi. On board, they found a chilling note from the captain that read, "We are not alone." But the mystery deepened further when decades later, others claimed to have found the real Cotopaxi wreck. Join me on the podcast as we unravel the truth behind this mystery. Friends, welcome to the Mysteries of Latin America podcast, where we tell stories about the myths, legends, history, and mysteries from Mexico to the southern tip of Argentina and all across the Caribbean islands. And today, we'll spend some time in the Caribbean as we unravel the story of the SS Cotopaxi, a ship that vanished in the turquoise blue waters under very mysterious circumstances. My name is Andrew Colon, and as somebody who has roots in different parts of Latin America, I tell these stories so that those of us who are also rooted in the region know our own stories, and so that those who don't know them as well and know a little more about what makes up an important part of our cultural DNA. I invite you to follow, subscribe, and share the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, and I thank you in advance for your time. Now, as we get into the story, it's important to note that the story of the SS Cotopaxi is a blend of documented events and conjecture, influenced by the lore that surrounds the mysteries of the sea. Our goal here is to appreciate the story of the SS Cotopaxi in the realm of the secrets of the deep, and then we'll tell you what we know for sure. Let's embark on a journey through the story and enduring mystery of the SS Cotopaxi. The SS Cotopaxi was a sturdy ocean-going steamship specifically designed and used for transporting cargo, such as coal, grain, and metal ores. Ships like the SS Cotopaxi were major players in global trade during the early to mid-20th century, facilitating the movement of goods between ports across ocean, and they were essential to the economy of the time. On November 29, 1925, the ship set sail from Charleston, South Carolina, bound for Havana, Cuba, an uneventful departure on a clear morning. It was carrying a full cargo of coal, and the crew was eager for the warmth of the Caribbean. As the ship steamed southward, none aboard suspected they would become part of a legend. 2 days into the voyage, the Cotopaxi reported that it was in trouble during a fierce storm. It's not known if it ran into a hurricane or tropical storm, and specific meteorological details may not be widely documented, but it was significant enough to cause the ship to send out a distress signal, indicating it was indeed taking on water. The radio operator's frantic voice crackled over the airwaves, then abruptly fell silent. The exact location of the ship when it sent out its distress call is not definitively known. Search and rescue efforts combed the areas from the eastern Gulf of Mexico to the Florida Straits and to the Northwest Caribbean, but no trace of the ship or its crew was ever found. The SS Cotopaxi had seemingly vanished into thin air or deep water. The disappearance quickly became fodder for the growing legend of the Bermuda Triangle, that infamous stretch of ocean from Miami to Puerto Rico and to the island of Bermuda, where ships and planes were said to disappear under mysterious circumstances. Was the Cotopaxi another victim of this eerie maritime zone? As years passed, the ship's fate remained one of the ocean's greatest unsolved mysteries. And if you're thinking that all that talk of the Bermuda Triangle is only about ships and planes from 100 years ago, it's not. The last documented disappearance in the Bermuda Triangle happened on December 15, 2008. A Britten-Norman Islander aircraft carrying 12 people vanished after departing from Santiago de Cuba en route to New York, and despite extensive search efforts, no train of the place or its occupants was ever found. And now we move forward 5 decades, where in the early 1980s, fishermen off the coast of Havana, Cuba, began whispering of a ghost ship. They spoke of a rusting, barnacle-encrusted steamship drifting aimlessly in the currents. It would appear suddenly, shrouded in mist, only to vanish just as quickly. The vessel looked abandoned and derelict, with no sign of recent human activity. The fishermen's tales were dismissed as nautical lore by authorities, until one stormy night in 1985. On that night, the Cuban coast experienced severe weather, with high winds and rough seas. Fishermen were advised to stay ashore due to the dangerous conditions. Despite the storm, a few daring fishermen ventured out. As they navigated through the tumultuous waters near Havana, they noticed a large, dark silhouette through the mist and rain. Initially, they thought it might be a large rock or another vessel seeking refuge from the storm. But as they approached, the fishermen realized it was an old, rusted freighter that seemed to be abandoned. They were struck by the eerie, ghostly appearance of the ship, which looked like it had been adrift for decades. The Cuban Coast Guard was contacted, went out to investigate, and when they intercepted the ship, they were stunned to find it was the Cotopaxi, its hull still marked with the name. The vessel was in disrepair, yet remarkably intact. No crew, no cargo was found, just eerie silence and the echoes of the past. As Cuban authorities searched the ship, they discovered the captain's logbook, badly battered by the elements, but some was readable, especially the last entry. The final entry described an overwhelming storm and a sense of dread among the crew, and a chilling last note that said, "We are not alone." What could have driven the captain to write such a thing in his final moments? The ghost ship had returned, but its journey was far from explained. The Cotopaxi was towed to port, where researchers pored over it for clues. Despite extensive analysis, no concrete answers emerged. The ship bore no signs of battle or piracy. It was as if it had been suspended in time, lost in another dimension only to reappear decades later. Or did it? 3 more decades would have to pass before we got a real answer. In January 2020, maritime historian Michael Barnett, marine biologists and underwater archaeologists found a shipwreck off the coast of St. Augustine, Florida, a well-known shipwreck which local divers referred to as the Bear Wreck. Through meticulous research and analysis, including the use of historical records, underwater mapping, and an examination of the ship's construction, they identified it as the real Cotopaxi. Their evidence? The ship's cargo matched the manifest of the Cotopaxi, which included coal. Its design and construction details, like the layout of the holds and the presence of certain machinery, were consistent with the records of the Cotopaxi, and cross-referencing with historical records, including the ship's dimensions and the timeline of its disappearance, supported the identification. And so the book was closed on the real SS Cotopaxi. But what about the ghost ship in Cuba? Until the real SS Cotopaxi was found and conclusively identified, the story of the ship had been surrounded by various myths and legends over the years. One such tale involves the supposed sighting of the ghost ship off the coast of Cuba in the 1980s, along with a mysterious note claiming we are not alone. However, there is absolutely no credible evidence or documented proof to support these claims. The sighting of the SS Cotopaxi near Cuba and the note are now just considered part of maritime folklore. There are no official records or credible reports confirming the sighting of the SS Cotopaxi near Cuba. Similarly, the existence of a note saying we are not alone is not supported by any documented evidence. It was a story that became a tall tale that became a legend and was now a myth of the Caribbean Sea. Once marine biologists, underwater explorers, and other scientists and researchers got involved in identifying the bare wreck at St. Augustine, however, we were able to close the book definitively on the mystery of the SS Cotopaxi. But what caused the loss of the ship? The team concluded that the combination of severe weather, structural and mechanical issues in the older vessel that made it vulnerable to that weather, and the fact that the ship was overloaded with cargo that could have shifted during the storm destabilized the vessel, making it take on water and causing it to sink off the North Florida coast. So why did I include the story of the SS Cotopaxi on the Mysteries of Latin America podcast? Because it's part of the folkloric tradition and history of Cuba, and it's also part of the enduring mythology of the Bermuda Triangle, where planes and boats have continued to go missing into this century. Friends, thanks once more for listening to our story. I invite you to follow and subscribe to the podcast and share it with friends and family who, like you, love a story about the myths, legends, history, and mysteries of Latin America. From the northern border of Mexico to the southern tip of Argentina, and like this time to the islands of the Caribbean, there are stories for those of us who have roots in the region, and for those of us who don't, to know a little more of our cultural backstory. Friends, my name is Andrew Colon, and I'll be here soon with another story for you. Cheers and saludos from Cancun. Adios.